In this video we're going to take a look at how to animate parts in the scene. So I will open a scene. I will open the engine scene, so I'll double click it. To animate parts in the scene we're going to use smart motions. And you'll find smart motions here if you go to catalogs, more catalogs, and click animations. Here you have smart motion features, several of them. And it's drag and drop. So for instance, if I now select the assembly here and I were to drag a smart motion feature and drop it here in the assembly, the whole assembly would be animated. So to animate one part of the assembly you have to select that part. So if I now control left click the cylinder, we see it's selected here in this scene browser, and then left drag a height move and drop it here. We see that there is an animation path here. We see in which direction it will move. And to see the animation you have to come up here to visualization, click on and then play. But before I do that I will briefly explain these buttons. Play in record means that if you click that button you will play the animation, and the animation will be recorded and saved to a file. You can also export the animation, export it as a AVI file or an MP4 file. You can also add a new path. Instead of dragging a feature from the catalogs, you can select a part in the scene and then add new path. You can also edit an existing path if you want to. And here we have the on button. To see the animation in the scene you have to click on to activate animation. Then click play and you will see that the cylinder will move. When this button is activated you cannot select anything here in the scene. So if you want to make additional changes you have to deactivate the on button. So you have to click on the on button again, and now the cylinder will go back to its starting point and you can make some additional changes. So for instance, if I control left click here the cylinder, now I can drag another feature. So I will drag a height spin, drop it on the selected cylinder. We see the grid, and if we have the cursor over this area we will see there is a small icon down here that tells me which direction the cylinder will spin. And when it comes to the animation path you can right click it, and here you have animation path properties. If you click the animation path properties you can make some changes to the settings, for instance time effect, and we will take a look at that a little bit later. I will click cancel here. You can also right click the endpoint. Here we have keyframe properties, and here you have additional settings. For instance, you can change the position of the endpoint, and we will also take a look at that a little bit later. You can also use the tribal. If we click this icon to activate the tribal, it will be located at the starting point. You can change the position of the starting point by using the tribal, or you can also select the endpoint and start the tribal, or activate the tribal and change the position of the endpoint. When it comes to the rotation or the spin feature, if you have the cursor over this icon you can right click, and here you have edit rotation properties, so that's also an option. So if you want to make some additional changes to this animation you can come up here to Smart Motion Editor. If you click that button this window will split into two, so now we see the Smart Motion Editor down here. So on this right hand side we have the animation tree, and if you open the Smart Motion Editor and it will look like this, you can expand this line by clicking this button or double click this line. And right now we see that it has the name engine, but we know that it is this cylinder that has the Smart Motion feature. We can see that here in the scene browser. If we expand the cylinder we have the Smart Motion here, but it says engine because engine is the name on top of the scene browser, and it's the name of the assembly. So that's why it says engine. If we come over to the timeline, we see the timeline in seconds, and the animation is set to 2 seconds. But we can also see the timeline in frames, and the animation has 30 frames. That means that the timeline is set to 15 frames per second. And you can see that by clicking here in the white area to deselect everything. Then you can click this Properties button, go to Properties, and we see it's set to 15 frames per second. You can change that to, for instance, 25 or 30. It depends on how smooth you want the animation to be, but I will have it set to 15. So we see now that the animation is 2 seconds, and if you click this, perhaps you can call it a group bracket, you can hover the cursor over the end point of the bracket, then left click and hold, you can extend the time. You won't see any preview, but if I drag it to 4 seconds, we will extend the animation to 4 seconds. And the features will also be extended. So, but you can also right click this group bracket and choose properties. You can also use this button to select properties, but I will right click and click properties. And here you can type in another value, for instance 6, and click OK. It will extend to 6 seconds. And also the features will also be extended. But you can change the animation time for each feature. For instance, if I now click the height spin and move the cursor over the endpoint, I can left click and hold and make this one shorter. Then I can drag it along the timeline, and I can also decide where this height spin should start and stop. But I can also move this height spin beyond 6 seconds. When I do that, the group bracket will also extend. So, but if I drag it back and also change the length of the height move, we see that the group bracket will stay at 6 seconds because it's set to 6 seconds. But now I want this height move to move during 6 seconds, so I will right click here, go to Properties and type 6 seconds, like so. And then I want this height spin to start at 3 seconds and stop at 6, and I can do that by right clicking, go to Properties, track start time will be 3, and length will also be 3, so it will stop at 6 seconds. Then I click OK. Now I can grab the slider to see how it will work. So we see it move 3 seconds, then it will start to spin during 3 seconds and move at the same time. You can also click this on button to activate the animation and click play to see the animation. And when this window is open, these buttons up here is deactivated, so you have to use these buttons to play the animation. Then I right click this group bracket, click clear to remove it, and then I close the window. Now I'm going to click add new path, but before that I have to select the cylinder, control left click the cylinder. So when it is selected, I click add new path. We see that the cylinder is now selected. If we come over to the properties here on the right hand side, we can choose motion type, and I will choose move, and in height direction, but I will set it to 50 millimeters and 3 seconds, and then I will leave this as it is. Then I click OK. The Smart Motion editor opens, and height move is now added to the cylinder. So, and I would like to add more features. So I come up here to select add new path. This time I choose spin, and spin around the height axis 360 degrees, 3 seconds, and I will leave this one as it is. Add the motion in the end, I click OK, and we see that this height spin will now be added at the end of this group. So that means if you have several features here and you have set to add the motion in the end, each feature will start one after the other. But you can also make some changes afterward, like if I now grab this height spin, I can move it back to start at 0 and stop at 3 seconds. Another thing to consider is I will close the Smart Motion editor. If you come over to the cylinder here and right click the motion, you can choose edit. If I click edit, the Smart Motion editor will open. Now I can edit these two features that belongs to the cylinder. But as you see, you cannot play the animation now because you're editing the cylinder features. So here you can just change where these features will start on the timeline, or you can change the length of each feature. But you cannot play the animation because it's just the cylinder that you're editing. And when this Smart Motion editor is open, you cannot right click here and to select anything, so I have to close it. So then if you right click this motion here, you can also copy a Smart Motion and paste it on other parts in the scene browser. So let's say if you have made some changes to the animation you have on the cylinder, would like to have the same animation properties on the other parts, you can copy the Smart Motion and paste it on the others. So if we do like this, if I now open the window here, the Smart Motion editor, and right click the height move and go to properties and go to time effect, and I will change that to linear and reverse and click OK. So now if I click on, we will see that the cylinder will start here at the end point. So if I click play, it will start from the end point and then go down to the bottom in the reverse direction, and it will go down and spin. So let's say that I would like to copy this animation to the other parts in the scene. So now I can close the Smart Motion editor, right click here, copy the Smart Motion, and then paste it on the other parts. Other parts will also have the same settings. So that's a way of doing it. So I will open the Smart Motion editor, and then I right click this group bracket and clear, yes, and close the Smart Motion editor. So in the next video we are going to animate the parts here in the scene.